Just how powerful is the Sith Emperor Vitiate? Having lived a total of 1300 years by the time of his death, the man known by many names staked his place as one of the most powerful force wielders in the entire galaxy, in the history of the galaxy. Not just a Sith, but a wielder of the Force. His legendary strength rivaling that of even Grand Master Luke Skywalker, something we thought to be impossible before thoroughly researching for this video. While Vitiate was not the chosen one, he has displayed feats in the Force that make him a contender for that role. Just based on what we know about him, it's almost as if Valkorion fulfills a great deal of what Anakin may have been capable of had he achieved his full potential. But at that moment, there has been a debate over whether Valkorion is truly the most powerful Sith in history, many citing Darth Nihilus or perhaps Sidious as outclassing the ancient Sith Emperor. So today, we decided to open a special holocron, provide our input in why we think that Vitiate, or Valkorion, upon great research, is without a doubt the most powerful Sith in the entire Order's history. We have made many holocrons in the past about Vitiate, from his history to just how evil in comparison to Palpatine he was. But for this video, we are going to keep it simple. Our holocron today will be documenting as many of Vitiate's feats in the Force as possible, as a sort of payment for respect to the man that we think outclasses any other Sith, and does so by a long shot. So, now that we've made our bold claims, let's analyze the Sith Emperor. Before we begin though, we have put a lot of time and effort into these videos, so if you've been enjoying them and haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so, as we do our best to post Star Wars content every single day. So now my friends, let us begin. The first show of power that we would like to analyze is when Vitiate was a small child. The man was then born as Tenebrae into the Sith Empire. Now we look at him at around 6 years old when his powers of darkness have awakened. Since his birth, he always had a strange aura around him, as he acted much older than his age. He never cried, and all animals avoided him. But when it was revealed that his mother had been unfaithful, and Tenebrae was actually a product of another Sith Lord, the man to whom she was married began to attack her. Tenebrae fed off of his false father's rage, and immediately murdered him through the Force by snapping his neck. But then, he did the same to his mother. For her treachery, he mentally tortured her for months on end, before finally allowing her to die. Eventually, the young Tenebrae would begin taking over his entire planet, one town at a time, dominating it with shows of power, killing anyone who would challenge the very young boy, or even do so for his pure amusement. When the Sith Lord's father arrived to see what the rumors of this evil child had done, Tenebrae would strip the Sith Lord of his ability to use the Force. This is insane. Keep in mind, Tenebrae was only 9 years old at this point, when he was dubbed Darth Vitiate at the time by Marka Ragnos, and given plenty of the Sith knowledge to read over. Vitiate would become a scholar of the dark side, and from this moment forward, his power would only grow to exponential levels. Something we need to make clear though, is that Vitiate is a prodigy of his time. He was able to strip someone of the Force entirely, a ritual that took Nihilus and Sion a great deal of time and effort. But in order to talk about someone's power, we of course have to talk about their effort. And now, we are going to discuss abilities that Vitiate pulled off casually, to what most Sith Lords would call lower level feats. For Vitiate, we will call them low effort. And to begin, we must discuss his most famous ability, that ability to dominate minds. Vitiate's ability to bend minds to his will and those around him is an ability that he uses extremely frequently. The dark side itself has naturally gifted Vitiate with abilities of the mind, an innate gift. But the very first manifestation of this comes in the form of the rare Sith ability known as Dominate Mind. This is essentially the dark side version of the Jedi mind trick, but instead is the power to completely control the will of another being. Over the course of his life, Vitiate would use this power to make many slaves. Regular individuals do his bidding, Force sensitives, and normal people alike. When it came to regular beings, he was able to dominate the minds of hundreds of people at once. This was something he did without much trouble at all. But when he did actually put effort into this ability, he got results like what we see on the world of Ziost. Vitiate would gradually gain control over the entire population of the world of Ziost, mind controlling hundreds of thousands of people. If this wasn't enough, he could also dominate highly powerful Force-trained individuals. In one instance, he managed to weaken and bring an entire task force of Jedi under his command. He has also done this though to the Sith, but his most impressive feat when he comes to mind domination is that of Revan and Malak, forcing them both to embrace the dark side and sending them back as spies. While the two Jedi turned Sith would break from Vitiate's control once they returned to the galaxy, they still remained under the influence of the dark side and didn't waver from their new path, showing just how powerful Vitiate truly was, able to dominate and change the mind of Darth Revan, someone who many considered to be the most powerful Force-sensitive of the entire era. But with Vitiate around and in the shadows, of course they were wrong. But Vitiate's power of controlling one's mind goes far beyond just dominating them, as he was able to literally separate portions of his consciousness and implant them into other beings. Famously, he did this with the Zakuul warrior known as Valkorion. Using this man, Vitiate would secretly begin construction of the Eternal Empire, a backup plan he set in place once he was still the Sith Emperor. Anyone that Vitiate granted his consciousness to became his proxies. We would see this again when he created the group known as the Children of the Emperor. These beings were infants in which Valkorion had implanted small portions of his consciousness. Their lives and personalities were superseded, literally becoming extensions of his own will. He knew everything they knew, saw what they saw, and controlled each of their actions individually. Valkorion would attempt to do this again to both the being known as the Outlander and the Jedi Grandmaster Satele Shan, getting very close to both of them. Still in the realm of abilities with the mind, Valkorion was a master of Force illusion, casting them on a level that we've never seen before. Valkorion could make multiple illusions of other beings or himself. But the most impressive form was when he created entire worlds out of illusion, doing so for no other reason than to manipulate the Outlander in order to prove his point. When in battle, Vitiate was known to be able to create clones of himself on the fly. However, these clones were no mere illusions. They were actually spells created from Sith magic, something that Vitiate was also extremely gifted at. But now moving on from the mental, let's discuss the more physical applications of the Force. Make no mistake, Valkorion was just as overpowered here as he was in the realm of the mind. When analyzing anyone's power in the Star Wars mythos, we of course have to mention their skill with the lightsaber. We rarely ever see Vitiate use a lightsaber at all, and that was because he genuinely had no need for them. This draws immediate parallels to Sidious, saying that he had grown beyond them. His way of saying that the Sith were too powerful to ever need one. And there has never been a truer statement when this is pertaining to Valkorion. He was genuinely too powerful to need a lightsaber. He was able to telekinetically create barriers that were strong enough to easily repel flamethrowers and lightsaber blades alike. But not just anyone's lightsaber, but that from his own son, Arcan, a boy who he constructed as a weapon of war. A boy from his own flesh and blood. Someone that ultimately meant nothing to him. On another note though, he was also proven powerful enough to create a barrier around Revan's cell, one that could repel Force spirits. When in the body of the Outlander, Valkorion was given permission to use his real power through them, and when he did, he unleashed a single Force blast that came out in a wave of energy, one that destroyed an entire charging army. This wasn't the only ridiculously powerful telekinetic feat that he accomplished within the Outlander's body though, as during one of the battles, every single combatant, every blaster bolt, and every explosion froze in its place, as Valkorion decided to stop time, doing so that he could have a simple conversation with the Outlander. Valkorion was literally powerful enough to freeze time using the Force, something that he did so with very little effort. No prep time, no ritual, his raw power. We're going to conclude this section with talking about his abilities in Force Lightning. This weapon is every good Sith's bread and butter, an ability born of pure hatred. Sidious is the poster boy, the one cited as having the strongest Force Lightning, but we're here to disagree. Valkorion could manipulate his lightning to manifest an entire arsenal of new abilities. Valkorion was able to create shields and barriers around himself out of Sith lightning, as well as compress it into orbs and fire it out in large blasts of power, ones that were able to take out entire strike teams of Jedi. Another manifestation of his lightning came in the way of being able to make it rain out of the sky, striking an entire field of enemies that dared to challenge him, like droplets of rain, power, energy surging through their bodies, frying them at their very core. To vitiate, a drop of rain. The color of force lightning is also very much indicative of how potent and powerful it is. The color of his sparks range from a deep purple to crimson, which is said to be the most painful. Red lightning can cut a force wielder off of the force, their powers, a brief moment in time, being nothing. Vitiate's lightning was able to overwhelm Revan's to Terminus and put him on the ground. Keep in mind, this was directly after Revan was absorbed the direct lightning from Darth Nihilus. Darth Nihilus' lightning was said to be able to completely disintegrate her enemies, what is previously believed to be the highest level. Vitiate's lightning, though, was so hot that it heated up Revan's mask and caused it to begin melting to his face. In one of Valkorian's strongest displays of power, he was able to take out an entire fleet of ships alone. The storm we saw Sidious pull off in The Rise of Skywalker was done by Valkorian using just regular force lightning. But moving on from force lightning, we must discuss some of his larger feats. What is the true power of Valkorian? Well, we must first start with how he attained immortality. Unlike other immortal Sith, Vitiate didn't just use one method of prolonging his life, but rather 3. He was aware of the ability of essence transfer and would use it quite often in the very beginning. Vitiate's raw, potent power ravaged his flesh, and he was forced to switch between different bodies very frequently. His uncaged energy was just too much for him, and to respond, he had a rotating door of different bodies in order to inhabit and keep his power. This would all change, though, after the ritual of Nathema, which we'll talk about in just a moment. However, Vitiate with this was able to prolong his life far further. Though eventually Vitiate would come across a real method of immortality which completely removed the need for him to switch bodies, unless his current form was physically killed. Vitiate would conduct a ritual which literally stripped him of all of his humanity. He sacrificed his soul for power and immortality. Let us now read from the Revan novel, where a Sith Lord known as Darth Scourge would undergo the same immortality process. This is what happened from his perspective. "Open yourself to the dark side," the Emperor said, and Scourge felt the air around him begin to swirl with power. "Let the spark of eternal life ignite within you," the Emperor called out. Scourge felt a sharp burst of heat within his chest. He gritted his teeth in pain as the heat grew more and more intense. "Feel your mortality as it is stripped away," Scourge screamed as invisible claws tore at his insides, seemingly shredding his vital organs. The heat in his chest had spread to the rest of his body. It felt as if his blood were made of fire. The agony became unbearable, and he shrieked and collapsed to the floor. "The ritual cannot be undone," the Emperor said, as Scourge writhed around in pain, wept on the floor. Through this torment, Scourge realized with dawning horror what the Emperor was saying. The ritual was over, but the searing heat and the rending of his insides continued unabated. Focusing on his will, he managed to still the convulsions raking his body. He forced himself to his knees, though every movement seemed to amplify the pain. Trembling, he rose to his feet and addressed the Emperor. "How long will this anguish last?" he asked, his jaw clenched. "As time passes, you will learn to accept and endure your suffering. Your mind and body will find ways to deal with the pain. After months, you will become accustomed enough to it to function in your role as the Emperor's wrath. Eventually, you will simply become numb, unable to feel anything." "Why?" Scourge asked, his voice something between a sob and a moan. "Everything has a cost," the Emperor explained. "This is the price of immortality." By this ritual, Vitiate shows what he is willing to sacrifice for immortality. He has chosen to put himself through this agonizing pain for eternity. The agony that he feels eventually feeds his power, and he loses anything and everything that ever made him human. And now, because of his perpetual life, he was able to obtain a power no other could before him, and he learned to share that power with others. The Knights of Zakul. This made up the bulk of the Eternal Empire army. They were all well-trained warriors from the world, but Valkorion had made a sort of soul link with all of them, endowing them with his own force sensitivity, his own power. Legions upon legions of Zakulian knights drew their power from their emperor, sharing in his ability to touch the force. This power has been only achieved once, with the Scepter of Martynas. The scepter was able to endow non-force sensitive with abilities to use the force itself, but their powers were completely tethered to the object itself. Valkorion did the same, but with his own body, a feat that has yet to be replicated in any other being. Most Sith would never do this because of their selfishness, but Valkorion had believed himself to have risen above the Sith way, and did this in order to make his empire stronger. But with all of this said, all of his massive abilities, his power, how did Vitiate actually get this strong in the first place? Well, according to legend, he was already born with an unprecedented amount of strength, but it was the ritual of anathema which put him on the map. When the old Sith Empire fell due to Martynas' failure, Vitiate rallied the remaining members of the Empire to his home world. He told them all that he had a ritual which would give them the power to take back the Empire. 8,000 Sith Lords arrived on anathema and took part in the ritual, one that took 10 whole days to complete. But in the end, Vitiate had deceived them all. Using their power to drain not only their life force and abilities, he did something worse. He tore the energy from the planet itself, leaving it a gray husk devoid of any life. It was said that over the course of Vitiate's long life, he would continue to feed off of the souls and energy of those who had perished in that ritual. The destruction of the anathema ritual was so great that Darth Revan would use a small sliver of its energy to create the ability known as the Thought Bomb, the very same Thought Bomb that Bane used to destroy the Brotherhood of Darkness, and one which completely warped the world of Ruusan. That ritual was made from a mere sliver of the energy that anathema had, that the ritual had, but this wouldn't be the only planet that Vitiate would consume. Next would be Ziost. Gradually dominating the minds of the populace, Vitiate would consume the life force of the planet as well, disregarding the fact that Ziost historically was one of the core worlds of the ancient Sith. So in case anyone assumes that Valkorion wasn't able to eat worlds like Nihilus, he absolutely was, and he did so without any of the drawbacks that Nihilus faced. His power increased, and he had no worry of hunger. So, just how powerful was the Sith Emperor Darth Vitiate? He took all of the greatest records of both Jedi and Sith and have seemingly smashed them to pieces. He has exceeded any mortal limitations of the Force, and is very close, boldly, to becoming a god of the dark side. Valkorion showcased abilities similar to the level of Grandmaster Luke Skywalker, but beyond this, the ones of Mortis, and even Abeloth. His level of control within the Force was something that we have never seen before, and he rarely ever got tired out from using any of his abilities. Not to mention, Jedi scholars would later theorize that Vitiate held together the Sith Empire, doing so for so long because of his own iron will. Literally by infusing his will into the Force, he kept the Sith in line and refused to allow the Empire to crumble. It is because of Vitiate that the Jedi were unable to crush the Sith thousands of years ago. If not for him, if not for his own will, they would have perished. Although there were times when he was killed, such as when Arcan would betray him, it was later revealed that Vitiate knew it was going to happen all along and allowed it. All as it was allowing his spirit to roam free, possessing the mind of the Outlander. Perhaps if Anakin reached his full potential, Valkorion may just be a worthy challenge. Or could this be just the beginning of a full potential, chosen one Anakin? What is clear though in our minds is that Darth Vitiate is absolutely the most powerful Sith Lord in all of the lore. Does this make him the best or the most interesting character though? Well, of course not. But it does make him profoundly powerful. So my friends, if you stuck it out for this long holocron, clearly you're just as interested in Vitiate as we are. So please leave a comment telling us your thoughts on the Dark Emperor. And also, be sure to let us know what other Force users' abilities you'd like to see us break down in the future. Thank you so much for staying with us with this long holocron today, my friends, and may the Force be with you.